Fantastic. Hey, hey. Are we live? Let's find out. Let's see here. Good morning, everyone. I think we might be live. Good morning. Can you hear me? Welcome to another Eurorack Patch Lab. This is going to be a super chill session today. We're just going to be checking out the patch that I've currently got in the system. And in a few minutes, we're going to be patching something from scratch today. I'm not exactly sure what we're going. Whoops! What we're going to be patching today, but it is going to be a broken beat groove. Let's see if anyone. Can you guys hear me? Am I live now? If anyone can let me know if you can hear me, that would be fantastic. Let's see here. So yeah, what I've got currently in the system is I've got a patch that I put together for actually for a live stream that I did this Thursday on a YouTube channel called Gear Dive Jam. And this was a jam that I put together specifically to showcase the 1010 Music Bluebox mixer. Let me see if I can get my OBS up here so I can switch cameras. All right, fantastic. So this is actually a complete jam that I put together. It's got lots of different sections and lots of different parts. And I'm going to attempt to play this jam for you while I do a multi-track recording of it real quick in the beginning of our stream today. And then we're going to attempt to patch something from scratch. Definitely going to be another broken beat groove. So if any of you have any preferences on tempo today, go ahead and drop that in the chat. If you're maybe into some down tempo broken beat grooves, or maybe if you'd like me to try to patch something super quick, just go ahead and drop a comment in the chat. Also, be sure to hit like so that YouTube shares the stream to more people. If you're catching this on the replay, thanks very much for joining me. Let's see here, loud and clear. All right, fantastic, everyone. So let me go ahead and show you this jam that I've currently got in the system. Everything is being routed and mixed through the Bluebox mixer. I'd like to try to record this, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the record activate button, and I am going to activate all 12 mono tracks that I'm currently running in the Bluebox. And let's see here. We're going to go ahead and record, and I'm going to just play this jam back for you guys. Let's check out what I've got here in the system right now. Okay, fantastic. I got the Bluebox recording. Have a sip of coffee. Hey, all right. Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Sean. We got a bunch of people in the chat. Hey, Russ. All right. Hey, Ronald. Thanks for joining me, everyone. I appreciate you being here. Okay, let me go ahead and show you what this jam sounds like, you guys. If the volume is too loud or distorting or anything like that, just leave me a note in the chat, and I'll do my best to get that adjusted for us. Before I started, let's get that back in tune real quick. Got an oscillator that's kind of, look up here. Got an oscillator that's not cooperating, but I got it back in tune here. All right, let's do this. 1, 2. think I missed that cue a little bit. There we go. Yeah. I'm using the wheel, Connor. Check it out. All right, not bad. Only a few hiccups along the way. One of my oscillators was out of tune, and I missed a few notes on the keyboard, but no worries. That's the beauty of a multi-track recording of something like this, is I can go back in and edit it after the fact. I'm going to go ahead and press stop now on the Bluebox mixer, and if I go over to the edit page, I can see that it did in fact record all of those tracks individually. I'm going to go ahead and save the project at this time, and I think what we'll do, let's see here if I can switch this camera back. I think we're going to go ahead and start discussing the individual details of how all of these sounds are being created and how I put this patch together. I just want to stress before we kind of get into the meat of the stream today, thanks very much to everyone who's tuning in. I really appreciate you being here with me, and feel free to ask any questions along the way, whether they be directly related to what we're working on, whether they be Eurorack questions in general, or whether they be just music productions in general. This is going to be a really casual hangout session, and we're just going to hang out and check this gear out together. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and discuss how I'm putting this together. Let me switch back over to the overhead camera here and go back to, let's see here, let's go back to one of these sessions so that I can get all my sounds back in and get my drums unmuted. Okay, so this is the Novation. I'm trying to look up at the camera here. This is the Novation SL MKIII MIDI controller and sequencer. It's not only a MIDI controller, but it also is a 8-track sequencer. And this is what I'm using to do the majority, to do all of, rather, of the sequencing in this jam. I've got individual tracks here, so I can control all of these different instruments individually, and I'm going to explain every single step of the way here how I've got this. Let me go ahead and highlight all of these tracks for recording real fast. I'm going to go ahead and talk you through how I've got all of this set up and how I'm controlling it and where all of the sounds are coming from individually. Okay, I've got a new module in my Eurorack system from Erica Synths, and it is a MIDI to trigger out module, which allows me to plug a standard 5-pin MIDI cable into the module, and then I've got 8 actual trigger signals that I can patch out from that module into any of like my sampler modules that I want. So the drums in this particular patch are all coming from the Eurorack. I'm using the Squarp Rample as my main drum kit, and I'm using 3 other Tip Top Audio 1 samplers. Now, I've got the Novation plugged in via MIDI to this module here from Erica Synths, the trigger to MIDI, so that when I press the keys over here on the SL MKIII, it triggers these sounds. So here's the drum sound. I'm triggering the first sample slot on the Squarp Rample. It's my kick drum. Next to that, we've got the second slot on the Squarp Rample lighting up there. So here I've got, complete control over playing and sequencing the drum patterns using this MIDI to trigger module from Erica Synths. Here's a hi-hat. I've got a clap. So the kit in the Rample is this kick, snare, hat, and clap that all kind of work together. Next to that, I have a ride cymbal that's loaded into one of these Tip Top Audio 1 samplers. You guys know I love that 909 ride. Okay, next to that we have a pad sample, a real long extended pad sample that's just holding down like an F minor chord. Hey, we got the King of Caesar in the chat. Thanks for tuning in, man. I appreciate you being here. We got Philip in the chat. All right, we got Jeremy in the chat. I can't see how many people are in the chat like I used to be able to do when I had the iPad in front of me. But since we're doing this via OBS now on the computer as a 2-camera stream, I think not only have we upped the visual quality, but also I think we're getting a higher audio quality on these streams now as well. So there's that pad sound. And all it does is just, you know, sustain a pad for a couple of bars when I need to be able to bring this into the mix, right? Yeah, I'm going to keep bringing it too. 2021 is going to be a lot of fun, I think. And then next to that, this is actually triggering the noise algorithm in the Platts module, which I'm using just as kind of like a noise hi-hat sound. And you can hear sort of, there's a kind of like some reverb and delay on that. I'm using a lot of the built-in effect sounds in the Bluebox here. It's got built-in delay and built-in reverb, and both of those are really high-quality effects. Hey, thanks very much, Philip. I appreciate that. And then last but not least, we have that impact crash that for those of you who've been tuning into my streams, you know I love to get that on the downbeat and whatnot. So let's see here. If I mute rather all of the tracks except for the drum track, and we can choose one of these, you know, patterns here, and we can see that, you know, this is how I'm programming the drums. Now, I don't know if you can see on the overhead camera here, but the top row of these buttons on the SL MKIII is a different color than the row beneath it. And I have 8 patterns currently programmed here, and so all I need to do is switch between the patterns on the top row, and basically, for those of you who are familiar with Ableton, that acts like sort of changing scenes in Ableton. I'm able to get, you know, a completely different beat on each of these patterns and completely different patterns to my sounds as well. So if we start over here on the first pattern, whoops, let me turn this down. There we go. We got just the drums here. And then as I change through the patterns, the drum pattern, you know, changes. Well, there's a sound coming in. But so as we go through the different patterns, I'm able to have different drum changes so that I don't need to worry about, you know, programming all this on the fly. It's been pre-programmed out beforehand. Now let's see here. The other sounds in the mix, we've got, let's see here, we've got the Audiothingies Micromonsta. This is playing back a really nice saw lead, and it's sort of the sound that I'm jamming on throughout the jam. Again, this is the Audiothingies Micromonsta. Hey, Trovarsi, good to see you. I really, really have a lot of love for the Audiothingies Micromonsta. I find that whenever I try to get this into a live jam, I always find a home for it in the mix. Between the preset sounds, it just always seems to find something that just gels right in. And I'm adding to that maybe just a little bit of extra reverb and delay from the 1010 Bluebox, but most of the effects are coming directly from the Audiothingies Micromonsta, which also has built-in effects. Now, the bass line, let's see here, let me go ahead and switch over to the next one. The bass line is coming from the Waldorf Blofeld, and it's just this really... have anything on the mod wheel there, but it's just this really funky. I really love this kind of a sound where it's like more than one timbre coming through at the same time, maybe a 7th or a 5th in there. Again, both of these little desktop synthesizers are really fantastic, I find, when I'm trying to put them in live jams. The Waldorf Blofeld, for the price, the sounds that come out of this are absolutely stunning. I know it's not quite the same as the desktop version, and you certainly don't have like a knob per function. If you want to program a bunch of your own sounds, this might not be the way to go. But if you're using it, just for your live jams and whatnot, the sounds that come out of this are absolutely amazing for the price. Let's see here. One of the things that also makes this whole session special, I think, is the customizability, is that a word, in the 1010 Bluebox. Meaning it allows me to route the channels any way that I see fit. I can have 12 tracks in the Bluebox, and some of those can be for the drums. And then, for instance, on the Audiothingies Micromonsta, I'm routing this in as a stereo sound, and on the bass here, I'm routing that in as a stereo sound. So of the inputs, I've got them split up by these little dividers here, so that it's got 6 stereo inputs. Let me show you a little bit better about what I mean here. But I've got these little adapters from Hosa that allow me to split the signal into a stereo signal, that is, into 2 mono channels. So this is for a full size, 1/4 inch plug, and these are the little ones for when I'm plugging the Eurorack directly into the Bluebox, so that I've got 12 channels coming in on this particular jam. But you can configure that. You can have 6 stereo channels, or any combination of the two, and I really find that awesome. So I'm running the drums directly in. I'm running them directly out of their Eurorack modules directly into the Bluebox. It takes line level signal and also Eurorack level signal, which is totally awesome. I've got EQ per channel, so I've got the drums being completely EQ'd and mixed using the Bluebox as well. Now, one of the things that I really am utilizing here on the Novation MKIII is not only does it have 2 individual MIDI outputs on the back. It is complicated. It's taken me quite a bit of time to actually start getting this in my workflow. In fact, the first few times that I used it, it sort of felt a little bit like making music in a dark closet with the lights off, wearing a blindfold, because you can't really see anything, and it is really different than working on something in the screen where you can really see all that information, like when we're working in Ableton or the MPC Live or the Force, where we can see all of that information super easy. But I am definitely getting used to this. And so we also have not only those 2 MIDI outs on the back, but we also have 2 sets of CV gate outputs, so that I can literally plug the MKIII directly into my modules over here and then play them from the keyboard, which has been a really nice bonus, I think, to getting it set up this way. So for instance, if I go to the next track here, I'm now playing the chords that I have in this jam. I'm now triggering the qubit chords module, so I can kind of mess with that waveform and the jam as the jam is playing. I'm really a fan of that qubit chords module, and this is the first time that I actually had it set up where I could have different notes triggered on it this way, rather than just a static kind of house pattern, which is normally how I've been, able to trigger it. But now that I can, put a little bit of variation, kind of get that little bit more authentic 90s house sound. I really, really am about that authentic 90s sound. Let's see here. And if I switch over to a different groove, I believe we need to go to this one here maybe. And patterns. Yeah, fantastic. Now, I've got the second set of CV and pitch outputs on the back of this, connected up to the Mazatron Wavemorph VC DCO oscillator. And I'm using this as like a second lead synth. Can you guys hear all of that reverb and delay coming through after the end of this sound? all of those trails and all of that, you know, effect, that's all coming from the 1010 Bluebox. We're running the Mastertron Wavemorph through a filter, which is currently not, you know, affecting the sound at all. And then I'm running that into the Bluebox, where I've got lots of the inbuilt reverb and the inbuilt delay on this sound. I really think that the effects that are built into the Bluebox are absolutely fantastic, and I'm getting a lot of use out of those right now. So I'm also running, like I said, the Wavemorph into a filter so that during the jam, this is the WMD Devices Carbon filter, and I really like this filter because it allows me not only to do my filtering, but it allows me to add a little bit of extra fold back and distortion. Not distortion, rather, but saturation, excuse me. Not distortion, but extra saturation on the sound. And I find that a little bit of that goes a long way. Okay. Let's see here. I believe that is all the individual elements that are making up this jam. And let's see here. Was definitely a change of pace to use the large keyboard sequencer for this one instead of like the Digitact or maybe like the Erica Sense black sequencer that's in my little Eurorack scaled down system now. But I really, really like using the SL MK3 every now and again. I just wish that it didn't take up so much room on the desk. I mean, for instance, you know, it takes up more room than, you know, the actual, you know, half of a system here. So I don't always have this out, and I'm not always using it because it really is large on the desk. This is the 1010 Bluebox, and it's a brand new mixer/recorder. It can, it's very customizable, which is one of the things that drew me to it. You can set it up to record 6 stereo tracks, 12 mono tracks, or any combination of those two. It has, you know, full mixing. It's a mixer, so it has full EQ per channel. You've got effects per channel, and then you can multi-track record that entire session. It is a really magic box, and I'm super into it. Yeah, for that exact same reason, right? It's just huge. When I do get into using it, I am having fun using it, but it just takes up so much room. Okay. So let's see here. I think what we'll do is go ahead and start trying to patch something from scratch. Not necessarily from scratch today. I'm not gonna start today by trying to pull all of the cables because I'm basically just gonna put most of these cables back in the same sort of, you know, setup that they're in now. And that can, you know, maybe just have us take a lot of extra time for no reason. So let me think here and figure out exactly what we do need to do to get started today. I think what we're going to do is go ahead and just clear out the existing patterns that I've got in here. We're going to go ahead and just load those. You're seeing it live. He deleted the whole project. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're getting rid of all of these. Okay, all those patterns are gone now. And we're going to go back to the intro pattern. And what I'm going to do is go over to patterns and just, let's see here. I have a lot of things muted still, right? Or no? Euro drums. Cool. Okay, so what I want to do is just delete the pattern information, but I want to keep the routing information if possible. So we're going to try to do that by clearing out these patterns individually, but saving the routing information. Bear with me as I try to get this set up for us today to start something fresh. It shouldn't actually be that big of a deal. The Blofeld, cool, get rid of the space line, right? And I press play and nothing's happening. Fantastic. One of the cool things that happened this last week is I got an update to the firmware for the Erica black sequencer, and now it responds very well to MIDI. And so I've got it plugged in to there's like an adapter here that comes with it where you can plug in a little patch point and convert that to 5-pin MIDI. So I've got that plugged into the sequencer. And when I press play over here now on the Novation sequencer, it will start the black sequencer running in time with our groove. And in fact, I did make a sound and a pattern, actually. See if we can load this up. Presets, load, preset. And maybe this actually did not get used in the patch that we just heard. That sounds alright. Not real stellar. Does anybody have any preference on a temp? Hey, what's happening, Star? Good to see you. Hey, we got Brandon in the chat. All right. Hey, Shape Noise. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I appreciate you being here with me. Does anyone have any preferences on tempo today before we get started? Should we work on something fast today? Should we work on something slow today? Mid-tempo? If you have any preferences on tempo, just drop something in the chat. Maybe the first one I see might be the one we go to. 111. There we go. We got a tempo. Let's go ahead and go over to the tempo page on the sequencer. And I'm going to go ahead and set this to 111. Thank you very much, Shape Noise. And let's go ahead and let's see here. If I just press play, it's going to start playing that little sequence. Maybe not the best sequence in the world. See if I can bring some of this delay down on this sound. Give me a moment here. Let's see if we can't tame this just a little. I have to scroll through a lot of menus, so bear with me on this one. Maybe my effects are mostly coming from the Bluebox here. Let's find out. In fact, that is the case. Wow. Yeah, see, I really want to stress that, how good these effects are inside of the Bluebox. What we're hearing there on that sound is literally just the effects. Let me turn this down a bit. No, those are both, oh, I see on 6, though. Cool. There we go. Let's dry that out a bit, yeah? Cool. And let's see here. I'm just going to let that groove play for a minute. Actually, let me check out these new drum kits first. I put a couple of drum kits together over the last few days. And I've got them loaded into the Squarp Rample, so maybe we could, see what they sound like. And if anything, jumps out at us, maybe we'll work with that today. Ooh. I think we're going to go ahead and work with this drum kit today because that sounds pretty cool. This is actually, I think, an old school break loop that I maybe chopped out the individual pieces of. You guys hear that little bit of vinyl crackle type of sound coming through there? What let's do is let's start making an 8-bar loop, shall we? I'm going to go ahead and make our drum pattern an 8-bar pattern, and I'm going to just press play here on the SL MK3. Now, I'm going to press record on the SL MK3. And when it comes back around to bar 1, I'm going to start punching in some drums. 2, 3, 4, 7, 2, 3, 4, 8, 2. And here we go. Nothing. Was I not in record mode? That's weird. What did I do wrong here? Nothing? Okay. Cool. So we've got like a hi-hat here. And using the Squarp Rample as the thing that's playing back the drum kits is a really neat feature in there. And that is you can have multiple samples in the same slot. And by default, the Squarp ramp will play back all of the samples that are in that slot in a random order. Now, if you listen really close, I don't know how well we'll hear this on the live stream, but this hi-hat sample, I'm just going to press the same key a few times, and you'll hear it actually scroll through some different sounding hi-hat sounds. See how every now and again it kind of plays a choked sounding hi-hat? So, again, let me change cameras here so you can see my hands. I'm just playing the same key, but we're hearing a little bit of variation in that sound, and that's because there are multiple versions of that hi-hat sample loaded into that slot, so that every time it's going to trigger that slot, it'll randomly pick back one of those samples. I have the same type of thing going for these shakers here. Well, there's just a few different versions, very subtle differences in the sample of these shakers that it's scrolling through. So if we get a hi-hat, combination with these shakers, we're going to get a little bit of sort of movement and variation baked right into the groove. I want to know how you would use the Force along with the MPC-I or the Live. With two modular synths. Yeah, we'll make the Force the master. I know that there's some issues using the Force or the Live between being master or slave. I haven't really used a lot of those boxes particularly together in my live jams. It's usually one or the other. And for me, typically when I'm using the MPC Live, I'm using it maybe more as like a source to bang on those pads, whereas when I'm using the Force, I'm using it more as like a way to sequence a full track together and really not necessarily using it a lot with other gear. So I'm not typically using the Force and the Live in the same session. So you'll definitely just need to kind of do some testing as to which one of those is better as the master clock than the other, because I know I've read on the Akai Facebook group specifically, some people have a little bit of issue depending on where those fall in the chain, and sometimes they tend to be better as the master in the chain sometimes, but that just takes a little bit of experimentation really. Let's see here. Yeah, 88 keys. These things take up so much room on the desk, right? When all of this smaller gear started really being popular a few years ago, I didn't quite get that. But then now, as I'm kind of getting more and more gear on my desk, I'm really finding a lot more appreciation for the smaller pieces of gear, Okay, so let's see here. Let's see if we can't go ahead and record some sort of a hi-hat part to this, shall we? I'm going to press play, and then I'll just press record, and I'll wait for it to loop around again, and I'll just pop in some sort of a hi-hat and shaker rhythm. Why is it doing that? Because okay, 4 bars. I see what's happening. Our tempo is so slow that what I originally was feeling like was 8 bars is actually just 4 bars. So we're working with a 4-bar drum loop instead of an 8-bar loop, and that'll make things a lot more straightforward here. Yeah, that Nectar Impact 61, low profile, right on. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and press record and punch in some hi-hats here. Let's get it. We'll get rid of that ride. Cool, now we've got some hi-hats. And in the third pattern, this one here, I accidentally pressed the ride symbol. Let's get rid of that, shall we? Fantastic. Now, I think what we'll do is maybe see if we can't, I don't know here. I don't know if I want to mess with the sound, the timbre of the sound we're hearing over here, or whether I want to mess with the sequence, or whether I want to mess with both. So I think what we'll do is go ahead and maybe see if I can't find a different wave table to start with. What I'm doing is we're sequencing. I've got the SL MK3 connected to the Eurorack so that when I press play on the SL-MKIII, it starts the Erica Sense black sequencer. And we're using the black sequencer to sequence a little arpeggio from the Expert Sleepers Disting EX Alpha Plus module. This is a poly wavetable synthesizer algorithm, which is a newer algorithm that they've just put into this module. And it allows us to choose all sorts of different wavetables that it comes with to start getting our sound. And let's see if we can't maybe scroll through some of these wavetables and find something that we like even better than the sound that's in here now. I'm just kind of casually taking the time as we get started today to, try to build a base that we can work with. Not a base as in a bass line, but a base as in a foundation for the groove. So let's see about... Actually, that is a square, right? I kind of like that. Maybe we just use this as a bass line instead today and go down a couple of octaves. How does that sound? Maybe too low? Maybe we bring it up an octave still. Kind of have a mid sort of a synthesizer line. And then maybe what we'll do is go ahead and randomize that actual melodic part until something sort of jumps out at us. What we can do is there's a feature in the Erica Sense black sequencer, which is called Magic. And I can literally, let's see, I'll get it going so you can hear, but I'm going to explain first. So if I press the Magic button, it's basically a randomize button. So I can randomize the pitch that this is putting out. And we were already tuned to an F minor pentatonic scale. So anything that I randomize in the black sequencer is going to try to adhere to that scale that we're working with for a bit of a more musical content. Let's hear what we can come up with. If I hit Magic and randomize the pitch here. Do that again. Maybe we'll try to create something manually here. Dialing in a few of these notes here. Trying to create a little bit of a custom pattern for us to work with today. Maybe bring this up an octave, maybe. Let me reset that also. Kind of a funky, wonky beat that we're creating so far today. All right, this is different for me. That's definitely something that we're going to explore further then. Doing a little bit of a mix adjustment on this ride sound that I have already in one of these samplers. Let's go ahead and add that into the mix, shall we? I'm just going to press play, then I'm just going to press record. And when the 4 bar swings around, I'll just tap in this ride. And 4, 2, 3, here we go now. And now what let's do is I, touch the record button over here so we're no longer recording. Yeah, I don't want to use this chord sample though today. So what maybe we'll do now is I have a bunch of these little tiny SD cards that have sort of different sounds on them. So we can potentially, grab a different sound here from a different card so that I'm not going to use that pad sound specifically today. Maybe we'll go ahead and I have a card here that has a whole bunch of F minor chord stabs on it. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and pop that one in and get it to read that, hopefully. Fantastic. And now, let's see here. How am I sequencing? Is it this one here? This one here. Yeah, cool. Fantastic. So I've got a bunch of chords samples on this particular card, and they're all tuned to the key of F minor. So all I have to do is just press play here, get our beat going, and then maybe we can scroll through some of these samples. All right, let's see here. Well, that's pretty cool already, but when things are like really cool right off the jump, I feel like almost like we're cheating, you know, like I haven't really done anything. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to scroll through some of the samples that are on this card. And if none of them sound better than that one, I guess we'll come back to that one. But that first one sounded really great, so let's see what we can find here. Oh, whoops, I'm on the wrong. There we go. For those of you who've been, following my live streams for any amount of time, you know that I'm really about these kind of funky beats that have big snares and whatnot, and then adding these kind of chilled out chord stabs and funky basses over them. So if we can get a really nice chord stab here, I think the next step that we'll try to attempt today is to find some sort of a bass sound, maybe out of the Blofeld or whatnot. But let's get a real nice chord pattern happening before we go down that road. Maybe that's too much like my sound. Let's keep going. We just found it. That's the one. And 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I'm going to record that in and we'll adjust it in the mix. 2, 3, and 2, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2. And here we go. So the chord, again, is being triggered here from the SL MKIII, and I've just got the MIDI out, one of the two MIDI outs from the SL MKIII, plugged into the Erica Sense MIDI to trigger module, which allows me to play any sounds that I'm, triggering via a trigger signal in the Eurorack with the keys here. So that, all we're doing is just tapping that chord sound, We're going to go ahead and adjust that chord sound in the mix, I think, here. Yeah, it's a little loud. Am I only on this one? Okay, fantastic. So I've got EQ on, a little bit of EQ on that by default as well. Let's mix that, shall we? Can you guys hear the volume okay at home? Is my voice okay? Is my voice too loud or not loud enough in comparison to the music? Hey, thanks very much, Connor. I appreciate that. Let's bring some volume back on that pad and kind of tuck the pad into the mix a little. Even more still, so that it's a little more subtle. Cool. And now, what let's do is go ahead and save this session that we're working on in case, anything goes wrong. But I think what we'll do at this time is just start scrolling through some sounds here on the Waldorf Blofeld and see if anything, maybe jumps out at us. I don't want to put a lot of energy into it, like that I'm looking for a bass sound or that I'm looking for a lead sound. Rather, in this, in this beginning creation period of putting something together, I really just want to maybe see if anything jumps out at me. And I find that the more I have a preconceived idea of exactly what I want to do, sometimes the harder it is to get there. And I really like to kind of let the music breathe a lot in this beginning section of creating things. So what let's do is just see what sort of sounds are coming out of the Blofeld, yeah? Maybe we'll bring these tracks up in volume just a tiny bit that it's coming through on. Whoops. Unrecord and get to the volume of those, and that's, yeah, 9 and 10. Okay, and keep scrolling through some sounds here. I really like it when there's, you know, something assigned to the mod wheel in the patches you're playing. As a synth programmer, I always take the time to make, you know, neat stuff happen when you move the mod wheel on my patches. The magic is in between the notes. That is a fantastic point, and I definitely agree with that, Shape Noise. Absolutely. The magic is in between the notes. Sometimes I need to really, really focus on that as well. Kind of a simple bass line, and I'm kind of liking the way that sounds. Maybe we'll go ahead and make the bass line an 8-bar bass line. So what I'll do is I'll play a different variation over it the second time through the 4 bars. I don't know if that makes any sense, but we'll see if we can make it make sense, shall we? I'm going to go ahead and press play. I'm going to go ahead and press record. I'm just going to wait for it to cycle back around again. 5, 2, 3, 4, 6, 2, 3, 4, 7, 2, 3, and 8. Cool. Well, if I drop the Eurorack patch by half a step, then we would be off from the key of F minor that we're working in right now, which is, you know, admittedly the only key that I'm super proficient in writing in. So we're writing in F minor today. Sometimes I do write in other keys other than F minor, but being as though, you know, it's the key that I really am versed in playing and writing in, especially on these live streams, so that it's not, you know, kind of painful watching me pluck out the notes and whatnot. I typically just kind of write in that key because I'm really familiar with it. I think we could probably bring the level up on that chord again. Let's find out. I think that's coming through on 5 and 6. And we can probably bring some more effects up on that track now that we've got it. Yeah, let's do that. Putting some effects on the chord sound now, to give it a little bit of air and movement in our mix. You know, that's a great point, and I'm glad that you brought that up, Douglas. For those of you who aren't super familiar with the MKIII, it has a mode that lights up the keys in whatever scale you're working with. So, for instance, if I was working in, let's say, you know, A minor scale or whatnot, I see that's the easy one. Let's say I was working in a D sharp, you know, major scale. That's definitely not something that I'm real familiar with. I can set that scale inside of the MKIII, and I can have just those keys. There's a little light here. I don't know if you can see that above every single key, and all of the lights in that scale will light up. And I definitely need to utilize that feature more when I'm writing and try to learn how to write more in other keys as well. But again, for these live streams, I just kind of go with what I'm really used to, so that it doesn't take a lot of extra time while I'm plunking around. Going ahead and putting a little bit of a low cut on the chords here. Yeah, so they give our bass line a little bit of room to breathe. Can you guys hear my voice okay? Over the music as the music is getting louder. I don't think it does modes, Wall, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, that is a really neat feature, Ed, and it was definitely something that contributed to my decision in actually purchasing this. You know, the concept that maybe it would help me to learn and play. Thanks, Connor. To learn and play in, you know, more proficiently in other keys than what I can currently. But you know, at the end of the day, there's never enough hours in the day to do all of the things that I really want to do, and I just kind of haven't, you know, had that extra time for just playing and practicing in other keys lately. This is awesome. Let's go ahead and add something else at this time, shall we? Let me, I'm gonna get disconnected back up to the Mazatron Wavemorph VC-DCO here so that I can play that module with the keyboard. And to do that, I just need to turn off 5-pin MIDI. I need to turn off USB MIDI. This also transmits MIDI over USB. Did I think of going with the, yeah, but this is just, I'm not that much of a keys player as I am more of a programmer and sound designer. So yeah, I didn't actually think of going with the larger one over, this one is huge already. I definitely think, for me personally, if I could get a smaller one that didn't have these faders over here, I would really, like a 25 key version that took up maybe, you know, this much room only, that would really suit my workflow really well. Because I'm just not utilizing the faders or a lot of the features in this. But again, I changed my projects up. Like, I changed the setup. You guys know I changed the setup for pretty much every single different project in here. So it's not like I'm consistently just using the exact same sequencer. There's, you know, maybe benefits to that for me for keeping, you know, super interested and whatnot, but maybe disadvantages as well, because if you use the same gear over and over, you're obviously going to learn it a lot deeper than some of the ways that I'm learning some of the gear in here that I'm using, for sure, absolutely. So let me just turn the CV output here on. Cool. And now, when I play the keyboard, I'm controlling the Mazatron Wavemorph VC-DCO oscillator over here. Again, I'm using the second set of CV and gate outputs from the back of the SL-MKIII to talk directly to the Eurorack. And I can filter that sound. Yeah, different chord progressions, exactly. A lot of my stuff starts sounding a little bit samey that way. That's why when I'm making samples and whatnot, I definitely deal with all sorts of keys and don't just get stuck in to F minor. What let's do is maybe see if we can get an arpeggio. Hey, what's happening, Pisto? Thanks for tuning in. Let's go ahead and turn the arpeggio on here and see if I can maybe get a neat arpeggio being sequenced from the SL-MKIII into the Wavemorph over here. Am I not on? What I'm coming in on, turn that down just a tiny little bit there. Go to the mixer. Cool. I like that. See if I can get that played in here like that. Maybe. There we go. The keyboard is made by Novation, and it's not only a MIDI controller, but it's also a sequencer. And so we're using it today as both a MIDI controller and a sequencer. That sounds pretty cool. Let's turn that down in the mix a little still, though, shall we? Check 7. Okay, cool. I've got a lot of reverb and delay on this sound. I really like a lot of reverb and delay, but I just want to stress that the reverb and delay on this sound are only the reverb and delay coming out of the Bluebox. There's no external effects on that sound in the Eurorack at all. These effects in the Bluebox sound absolutely fantastic, you guys. So, oops, got my headset caught there. What we've got here is we've got the drums being routed from the Squarp rample, which is housing the samples, and the outputs of the rample are being routed directly into a DivKid mutes module, which is basically just 4 on and off switches. And doing it this way allows me to have control in real time over these drum sounds, and not even, like, I wouldn't have to necessarily, if I want the drums to stop for a moment, I don't have to actually program that out. I can just get over here and turn them on and off manually using these switches. What DAW and mix engine do you use? Is Bitwig a CPU hog? I didn't actually know that. The pyramid as a sequencer, Douglas, is that the Squarp pyramid? I think is that Squarp? I might be thinking of the Squarp Hermod, I think maybe. But I've definitely heard a lot of good things about the pyramid sequencer as well. I kind of wanted to get into that squid sequencer. But I mean, I just really have too many sequencers, and there's not enough hours in the day. So let's see here. So we have full control over the filter of that new sound. I can turn the drums on and off in real time in our groove. But I think it might be nice if we could filter down that chord stab. I don't actually... Oh, I could. Okay, if I remove the filter from being used on the qubit module, then I could route that chord stab into this carbon filter here. And I think we should probably do that so that we have a little bit more control over our chord sound. Is it this one here? Yeah, it is. So I'm going to go ahead and take it out here, and we're going to need a slightly longer set of cables. And we're going to go ahead and swap this out real fast. We're going to put this out of the filter over here, out of the carbon filter over here, and we're going to unplug this one, and then we'll just plug our chord sample into that filter, and this will allow me to have some filter control over our chord sound. And let's see if we can do that here. If I go over to the drums, and here's our chord, and now I can filter that down. Cool, we've got a little bit of fold back on it. Let's get this in the mix, shall we? Yes, it's very similar to that Native Instruments controller that has the 2 screens on it. I actually have a lot of gas for that one as well. I do have the Native Instruments Complete, and that would be super neat with the one with the screens on it. But I mean, it really just depends on the workflow because that one doesn't actually have a sequencer built into it. So it's not really a standalone, whereas this is. Douglas, the pads are coming out of a Tip Top Audio 1 sampler module in the Eurorack module. And what this is just a bunch of chord stabs that I've sampled, converted to mono 16-bit 44, and loaded into the sampler here so that we can trigger those. I'm using the CV and gate out on the back of the MKIII today to talk to some of the Eurorack. But to get the drums and trigger the samples, I've got a MIDI out from this controller, and it's being routed into an Erica Sense MIDI to trigger module, which allows me to turn these MIDI notes into Eurorack trigger signals so that we can trigger these drums and any samples that I have in these modules, like this chord sample. Oh, forget about it. Yeah, a summit with an OB6 would be absolutely magic. I couldn't agree more. That is very dreamy. Absolutely. Yes, LFO on the ARP to evolve the sound over time. Yes, that's a fantastic idea. What we could do there is we could potentially run an LFO to the filter cutoff of the filter that the LFO is running to, excuse me, that the module is running its signal to, so that we can do a little bit of modulation on this LFO. Let's do that. That's a great idea. Thanks, Luke. Let's do that. Yeah, for sure. So this is it. For those of you who maybe haven't been joining my live streams, or maybe this is your first live stream, I've been typically using a larger system than what we've got here for the Eurorack, but it's kind of spread out over the desk in multiple cases and whatnot. So this is just a very scaled down version of what I've got. So I don't have all of my tools in the case per se. And how we're going to work this today is I need an attenuator, but I don't have an attenuator module in the case. So I'm going to use this attenuator cable. It's an inline attenuator. See if I can get that right up to the camera where you can actually see there's a little tiny knob basically in the middle of this cable, which allows me to send as much or as little of this signal through as I want to. Now, how are we going to use this? I'm just going to take an output from an LFO module here, and I'm going to go ahead and route that into the volt per octave input of our filter, giving me some modulation happening on the cutoff of the filter. And now we can just use this knob in the middle of this inline attenuator to adjust how much movement is actually being sent to this LFO. And let's see if we can maybe solo just that LFO and find out. Awesome. Is it that one? No, we want... Right, so this one is rather there. Cool. Are we getting that? No, not yet. What am I doing wrong? Maybe put it in the right. There we go. All right. So I have a little tiny LFO here because I'm trying to save on space in this particular instance of modules that I put together. So I'm using the 2H, you can't really see it, sorry. I'm using the 2HP. It's a tiny, tiny little module, and it's just an LFO that's just stuck in here. So we can adjust the rate of this so we can get a really slow and gentle filter movement on this sound, which is what I think I'm going to go for. Yeah, do you hear that moving our filter cutoff very slowly now? That's exactly what I want. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, hear it take it way down there? That's a great suggestion, Luke. I appreciate that. Hey, yes, it is the Bluebox. Fantastic. This is doing all of the mixing and a lot of the effects right now. Let's go ahead and get these other tracks back in the mix, shall we? Hey, nice, Jamie. Hey, Lee, thanks for tuning in. Here. I think the Blofeld might be a touch too loud in the mix, so we're going to go ahead and bring that down just ever so slightly here, maybe just a couple of decibels. And I think, let's see here, I sort of want I think what I want to do is I want to try to, in the mix here that we're creating, I want to try to exchange the focus. Currently, when I press play, the focus here is really on the arpeggio, and the chord sample is kind of in the back of the mix, kind of underneath and behind that arpeggio. And I'd really like to reverse that so that our chord stab kind of glides over the whole mix, including that arpeggio. So I want to dial that arpeggio we've been working with back in the mix a little bit and find a way to kind of push the chord sample more to the forefront of the mix. Let me go ahead and try to do that. Let's see here. Is it? That's the Blofeld, but that's our arpeggio. And that's on track 7. Let's go ahead and bring that down quite a bit and see how that affects our mix here. Yeah, okay. Just bringing that chord up a little bit for us still. How's that mix sounding there at home? Can you hear all of the individual instruments okay? Oh, he missed the grand t-shirt giveaway episode. Oh no. We'll have to do another one of those. I'm kidding, that's a joke. We haven't done a grand giveaway episode. Let's go ahead and start seeing if we can create actual patterns that make sense here. What let's do is let's go ahead and copy this first pattern. I'm just going to hit save, and we're just going to copy that into the second pattern over. Now, I'm going to take the first pattern and we will remove some elements from it. So maybe we'll go ahead and remove the arpeggio from our first pattern so that that only starts when I bring in the second pattern. Let's go ahead and press play here. A little bit of adjusting on the notes of our bass line here. Ooh, that's better. Let's save that. And save over here as well. Now, let's bring in that arpeggio. No? Did I bring it down too low? Yeah, I brought it down too low. We'll fix that. Better. Hey, all right. Yes. I just want to say very clearly, yes, Breakline, this will absolutely work with an iPad. You can use this as a MIDI controller with an iPad, and you can use this. You can use the sequencer functions of this with an iPad as well. If you were to, let's say, connect this up to an app like Alm, and then route, multiple different synths and drum machines, and then you can use the 8 tracks to sequence those using this. No problem. Absolutely, yes, will work definitely with an iPad. Kind of a cool one today. Got a nice little groove going here. Okay, so we're sort of creating different patterns along the way here, and sometimes we'll add elements, and sometimes it's good to take elements away. I think maybe what we'll do is go ahead and add that crash impact sound that I like to use, and if we make sure that we're on the right track, can go ahead and trigger that. There it is. And so let's go ahead and just hit play and record here. Now, actually, I see. I'm going to need, since it's on our drum track, and our drum track is only a 4-bar pattern, I'm going to need to make our drum track an 8-bar pattern, so that this crash that I want to, add in. Oops, sorry about that. So that this crash that I want to add in will only play every 8 bars. Because if we have that play every 4 bars, it's going to get a little bit tedious. So we're going to go ahead and duplicate out all 4 of those measures, and then we're going to make the drum pattern a full 8-bar pattern here. We'll need to do that in our second pattern as well once we get started, but I'm going to go ahead and get the crash symbol on the downbeat here. We can do that in a couple of ways. I can just press play and record. We can let it scroll through, and I can just punch this in on the downbeat. Or I can just go to the patterns. I can select the pattern I want, and then I can go into those steps. I can select the first step, and I can put that there. I think we're having a little bit of an issue with our drums somewhere along the line here. In fact, let's maybe see if we can't figure this out. Yeah, I think my entire drum beat is a little bit shifted off the grid. And so I think what we'll do in that case, because we don't want a drum beat that's a little bit shifted off the grid, let's go ahead and fix this now before we get any further into it, shall we? I'm going to go ahead and just delete all of the drum patterns, right? I'm going to go ahead and make it an 8-bar pattern again. I'm going to go ahead and press play. Right, and we're just going to, hit record. I'm going to punch in some new drums. USP. I'm not sure what you mean by USP, Lee. Can you explain what you mean by that? And I will definitely answer that. 2. Let's go ahead and hit record. Whoops, was I already recording? I didn't mean to be. Okay, cool, I wasn't. Fantastic. 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4. I'm just going to let it play all 8 bars. 5 and 6. We're just going to punch in some drums. 7 and 8, 2, 3. Here we go. Why it did not record for me? That's disappointing. Well, it did. Okay, let's make sure that we got all 8 bars. We don't. That's the same thing I did last time. You would have thought that I would have learned from the first time. I keep feeling like it's time to stop, but I'm doing an 8-bar pattern, not a 4-bar pattern. So I'll just duplicate that out. It's really simple. We'll go duplicate pattern 1, duplicate pattern 2, 3, and 4, and now I've got an 8-bar pattern. I'm going to press play and hit record. When it flips around, I'm going to start punching in some hi-hats. Yeah, cool. I don't know how I got off in the beginning. 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 6, 2, 3, 4, 7, 2, 3, 4, 8. Here comes the hi-hats now. Now we've got those hi-hats in there. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. When it comes back around one more time, I'm going to go ahead and punch in this crash this time. 2, 3, 4, 6, 2, 3, 4, 7, 2, 3, 4, 8. And here comes the crash now. Oh, what is the unique selling proposition of this mixer right here? I can answer that really easily. Number 1, it's the form factor. You've got anywhere, and the customizability. I really want to keep saying that. You can route anywhere from 6 stereo channels or 12 mono channels, or any combination of the above. So it's a really, really small 12-channel mixer recorder. You can record the tracks individually. So currently, like for instance, in my last patch, I had all 12 tracks being used here. Individual EQ and individual effects on every track, and then you can record that as well into a multi-track, multi-track recording session. So it's a mixer slash recorder, and very customizable and super fun to use so far. I'll go ahead and get the volume on that crash down, I think, here. Where's that coming through? Let's go ahead and put this ride symbol back in, actually. Hit record. Wait for it to go around. Let's get that. And 8. I'm gonna go back around to 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3. And I started on 5. So I can turn the recording off. Okay, cool. We can go ahead and save that. So now we should have our kind of drum beat fixed back to the grid and that crash symbol there on the downbeat. Yeah, cool. Bring that impact down in the mix just a little bit. Is that ride symbol maybe too loud as well? Let's see here. It's coming through here, so I can bring that down a little still, I think. Yeah, just tuck that ride back a little bit. Surely, anytime. Oh, absolutely. Let's focus on that for 1 second for everybody else who maybe didn't catch that Tobe illusion. Tobe illusion says, I think you can save a lot of HP in the rack for the features that are on the Bluebox, and I could not agree more. That is definitely a selling feature for people who are in. Actually, let me step one step back. The Bluebox can handle line level signal, and it can also handle Eurorack signal. So you don't need to have any sort of converters. Typically, Eurorack level is about 18 decibels louder than your standard line level signal. So to have the mixer be able to be fully compatible, just plug your modules directly in, is a really, really nice feature. And so the fact, for instance, that I've got EQ on every single channel, I don't actually have a lot of EQ in the rack. I chose this specific mixer from Bfaco because it has a 3-band EQ. I got low, mid, and high here, but this is the only form of EQ that I have in my entire system, which is actually quite a lot more robust than what we're seeing here right now. So for instance, to have 12 individual EQs, you would have to have 12 individual, EQ modules over here. You've also got individual control over the delay and over the reverb in this module. So I'm not really using so much of an extra reverb and delay here. You can absolutely take mixers out of your system and plug modules directly into this as well. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, Allen and Heath, come on, Doug. I love Allen and Heath quality as well. I've got the the Zone DB2 mixer from Allen and Heath, and the quality on that is just amazing. Yes, absolutely. Okay. So let's see here. Where's my chord stab? It's on the. Yeah, something muted or something? Oh, because we removed the pattern. I see. I now need to put our stab back in because our stab is being controlled from a MIDI to trigger module. Again, I'm sending MIDI out from the SL MK3 into an Erica Synths MIDI to trigger module, which allows me to trigger anything in the rack that needs a trigger signal by just pressing the keys over here. Let's put that chord back in. Enjoy your dinner, Walt. Thanks for tuning in. 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3. Let's put it. And 8, 2, 3. Another one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. Let's go ahead and save at this time. And I think what we're we're going to do, since I kind of rearranged that pattern back to the grid, I think we're going to go ahead and save that over the original second pattern. And we'll just go now to this pattern, which is our second pattern that I've just, saved here. And I'm going to recreate the arpeggio part that we had in here a moment ago. Fantastic. I believe we can do that like this. Yeah, cool. 2, 3, 4. And I just want to, I think, dial the volume on the ARP versus that chord stab the tiniest little bit still. So let's bring our chord stab up the tiniest bit, and then on that arpeggio, I still want to bring that down like 1 decibel. We'll go ahead and save our project on the Bluebox, which is going to remember all those EQ and volume settings. The analog 4, yeah, Electron is wonderful stuff. Over here out of shot, I've got 2 Digitacs, a Digitone, and an analog heat MK2 that I'm a big fan of. The Electron stuff is just fantastic. In fact, if I had to pick one unit out of everything in here, that kind of like a desert island thing, I was only going to take one thing and that was all I was going to have to work with, it would be the Digitac. 10 out of 10 times. That's absolutely my favorite piece of gear in the studio to work with. Absolutely love Electron stuff. Oh, that's a great point. Sean is Smezat in the chat is saying that the Eurorack audio signals are higher so that we can use the audio voltages as CV to control other things. I used it using audio as control voltage. Thanks for mentioning that in the chat there. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's not super cheap. This was $500 in the US. So that's a bummer that it's a little more in the UK. I don't know if that's due to the translation. I'm not saying that very well. Sorry. Okay, so I think what we'll do then is go ahead and create a third pattern at this time. We'll go ahead and just save this pattern into the third slot over. And maybe what we'll do is go ahead and change the drums on this particular pattern so that we've got our first pattern that sort of starts off the groove, our second pattern which sort of introduces the arpeggio to the listener, and then let's go ahead and get the change up on some drums here so that we keep a little bit of interest in this pattern moving forward. So I'll press play here, and actually what let's do to make it also a little bit more dramatic here is let's go ahead and take out the chord stab from this third pattern so that we can our brains can kind of have a little bit more room in the mix to focus on the arpeggio and the fact that we're doing a bit of a change in the drums here. And so how I'm going to achieve this is I'm just going to clear out all 8 bars of the drum pattern and leave, the body of this groove here. And I want to create something different. A different kind of vibe. So let's do that. 7, 2, 3, 4, 8, 2, 3, 4. Whoops, I'm on the wrong track. So let me, yeah, okay, I see what I've done here. I'm going to go back to our patterns. Whoops. I'm going to pick that one. I'm going to save it again over here. Then I'm going to play this one and delete the drums. Cool. There we go. All right. 5, 2, 3, 4, 6, 2, 3, 4, 7, 2, 3, 4, 8. have a different drum pattern with those hi-hats coming in and everything. Let's go ahead and put the crash on the downbeat of this pattern as well. Where are we at here? 7, 2, 3, 4, 8, 2. Let's put the crash in. Cool. And so basically, I did not put the ride in this time, so we've got a little bit more variation on this pattern as well. And this is just sort of how I build up live jams. I just start creating the patterns, start spacing things out, and start, making sure that different elements that we've created are coming in or out of those different patterns so that the patterns are creating, change ups. Let's go ahead and start with pattern 1 here, which is just the drums, our main sort of mid arpeggio coming out of the Erica Synths black sequencer and Disting EX Alpha. It's got our drums, it's got our crash, and it's got our chord. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit more dramatic as well. I'm going to go ahead and move all of our patterns 1 over by saving them all 1 over. That gives me a total of 4 patterns now. And I can take our very first pattern and we can remove that chord stab so that it's even more dramatic when the chord stab finally does come in. And what we'll do to make that happen, did I really do that again? Whoops, that would be here. Yeah, I really did do that again. We're off 1 again. Well, we're going to let that go for now and just keep going with the session, I think. But what I want then is it here? Where is that? It's here. Cool. Save. So now what I've done is I've made it so in our very first pattern, the chord sample does not happen. So we're going to bring that in pattern 2. And then in pattern 3, we'll bring in that arpeggio that we created. And in pattern 4, we'll go ahead and change up the drums. Let me go ahead and play this back for you, what we've created so far. Change it. Did I not put that arpeggio back in here? We'll find out. Nope, there it is. Just want that louder still. Yeah. I could jam over this, right? Lost my groove entirely there. But see, I'm playing now the Audiothingies Micromonsta over the top of the groove, and we could either use, save that as an element to play live over the groove, or we could go ahead and use this to program more patterns with as well. So for instance, this is pattern number 4 here. We've kind of done this change up on the drums, right? I can save this as pattern number 5. Maybe we can make the Micromonsta an 8-bar loop, and maybe I can just play this, hit record, and then when it cycles around again, I can play like an 8-bar lead of some sort using the Micromonsta. So I've got record pressed over here on the right. 4, 2, 3, 4. We're going to let it scroll through the pattern again. 2, 3, 4, 7, 2, 3, 4, 8. And I'll play something now. got that in our pattern. Let's save this. Put the ride in here. Now, most of you will probably have noticed that I hit a wrong note during that solo, and we can actually fix that, no problem. What I'll do is go ahead and just see what bar that's happening on, and I'll just copy one of the other bars into that bar instead. So we're good through 1 to 4. It's there. There we go. So it's in bar 3 of the second half. So I just copied bar 3 from the first half into bar 3 of the second half. And now that off note that I hit should be gone. So we can go back to our pattern section and maybe make that intro even a little bit more of like an intro pattern by maybe removing some of these drums, right? Let's do just that, shall we? We'll go ahead and clear all of the drums out. We're in pattern 1 now. I'm gonna go ahead and save this here. We'll play again. That ARP. I can mute the drums over here, don't forget. Back to the beginning now. And just like that, we've created a little bit of a, of a jam, of a groove, of a section here. We've got, different elements. We've got kind of a progression in how we start and then how we start moving into the jam. Now that I've got, 5 actual patterns here, I can just kind of start copying individual patterns to different slots and then changing up those patterns. I find that when I'm working and building up a live jam, I'm pretty much going to need at least, anywhere from 8 to 16 individual patterns, depending on how much stuff I want to have, recorded previously. But that's pretty much how I'm doing it. We just go step by step and start building up all of the elements. A lot of times I'll, spend a lot more time maybe scrolling through sounds on some of these devices. But we had some drums already set up inside the Eurorack today, which made things a lot easier. I'm using the same lead sound as I was using in that last session. And we found a really awesome bass sound over here on the Blofeld. All right, let's see here. If anyone has any questions, now would be a great time. We've been going for just a little over an hour and a half, and we've got a pretty nice session built here. Let's go ahead and play this last pattern that we've got and see maybe what we could do to create yet another pattern. Hey, thanks for hanging out, Connor. I really appreciate that. I hope you enjoy your dinner. Yeah, that's what we'll do. We're going to go ahead and copy this pattern into the next pattern slot. And then I think what we'll do is just maybe delete the drums from this pattern again. So we've got sort of a break happening here. Yeah, fantastic. And all we need to do to really sort of get like an emphasis that it's a break is still kind of put a kick drum and a crash cymbal on the downbeat. So let's achieve that, shall we? We'll go into the patterns. I'll select pattern 1. I'll select the first step, and we're just going to put the kick and the crash on that step only. So the drums for these 8 bars will totally go away except for that. Maybe we'll put in, maybe keep the shakers going for rhythm or something. Let's see what happens here. Are we on? Yeah. Might be a good time to actually, let's see here, bring something out as well. But let's see about maybe putting in some shakers first. 2, 3, 4, 6, 2, 3, 4, 7, 2, 3, 4, 8, 2, 3. Here comes the shakers. A little off note in my solo part here, but we're just doing a live stream, so I'm not really going to worry about that. What I'm doing, Doug, is we're just using the sequencer today. There's no recording going on at this time. We're using the Bluebox just as a standard mixer right now, allowing me to adjust the levels, do some EQ, and then also put some delay and reverb on the sounds. But we're using the Novation SL MKIII here as the sequencer. So I'm just playing parts, and then the sequencer is just playing them back. There's no recording going on today. We're just hearing everything in real time being played back from what you see in front of me. Let's go back into the beginning here. My wrong note. Arpeggio. Hey, thanks for joining in, Colin. Next one will be that break. And we could maybe do fun stuff and filter down the parts that are playing. Now we're just sort of back at the beginning of the jam again. And I could just repeat that and interact with the sections as the jam is going. I just want to answer a few questions from the chat real quick. And the first is, how do I back up sequences from the SL? I actually don't, is the thing. The projects that I make are all just for that particular project. If I was using this as my main device and it was like I was making a bunch of projects with it, I absolutely would use the Novation component software to do backups and stuff. But currently, every project that I'm doing is just its own kind of entity. It exists for either that YouTube video or, like, for instance, today, I mean, this, when I, end the live stream today, that'll be the end of this jam here. I don't take everything that I create necessarily and turn that into a finished track because there's just not enough hours in the day. Is there a song mode on the SL-MK3? There is not a built-in song mode. What I'm doing is just, creating these individual patterns, and then I'm playing those back to back manually, triggering when they're going to trigger. And it's basically like using scenes mode inside of a DAW like Ableton, if anyone is familiar like that. That's sort of how I'm using the SL-MK3 here. And let's see. Yeah, uses it to drive a summit. That's the bonus, is that you can literally connect this up to anything you want, whether it be a Eurorack, whether it be any synthesizer that has MIDI as well. So yeah, super. You can map I haven't really mentioned that because I don't really use that function of this that much. But there are 8 knobs here up at the top, and you've got 16 buttons over here on the right, and you've got some faders as well, and you can select an instrument basically, and you're playing that instrument. Okay, so I'm playing the Micromonsta here, but I could go through using the component software, and I could map any of these buttons and knobs and faders to control things on the Micromonsta, so that I could maybe filter the Micromonsta while I'm playing it by using a fader here, or adjust the volume or the envelope. But one of the things for me personally that sort of prevents me from doing that is that every every one of the 8 tracks individually will respond to the knobs, faders, and buttons differently. And you may notice that there's no visual representation or screens at all around these 16 buttons and these 8 faders. So if you have 8 faders that change depending on what instrument you've chosen here, you really have 64 faders, and they'll only work depending on what instrument you've got selected, and you can't see what they're assigned to. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I can't really easily memorize what 64 faders do, and because this isn't my main sequencer, because I don't have a main workflow that I use all of the time, I haven't really gotten into mapping my gear to this and using it in that way. I'm basically using this as a really rudimentary sequencer. Let's see here. What DAW do I use? It depends on what I'm trying to accomplish. And that's a great question, and I would love to answer that. Because I get asked that a lot. And the answer is that it really depends on what my end goal is with the music. I write and have been producing music under the moniker Prism Prime for about, gosh, I don't know, 20 years or so. And I've got literally hundreds of tracks that are released under that moniker of Prism Prime. And when I'm looking to write like a finished piece of music that I want to release, that I want to stand up to other existing, club tracks and all that stuff, it's going to be Ableton for me 10 out of 10 times. When I'm looking to produce finished, releasable music, my go-to is going to be Ableton. That being said, if I'm trying to do anything other than create finished, releasable music, like, stuff you might find on Beatport, if I'm trying to do anything other than that, really all bets are off, and I'll use anything in the studio, from the iPad to the Digitax to a combination of hardware and Eurorack, or just the Eurorack only, or the MPC Live, or the Force. I find for me personally, the using of multiple tools and not having a one specific workflow is kind of where I find the most creativity. But I'm also a sound designer, and at the end of the day, my goals with what I'm creating are a lot different than I think the average person's goals are when they're creating. Oftentimes, I'm working on sound design, or I'm working on sample pack creation, or I'm, programming sounds inside of sequencers. I'm not my end goal changes like dramatically and daily as to what I'm trying to actually do with the music. So I'm not always just working in Ableton using the same tools, and I'm not always just working in the Eurorack, or always just the Digitact, or always just the iPad. It completely changes, because I really think that as long as you know, as long as you're not trying to make the most #1 single that anyone's ever heard, you know, the most professional, perfect piece of music you can. If you're not trying to create that, if you just want to have a jam or just have some fun with some gear, like all bets are off. But for me, if I want to work in the DAW and I want to create finished, releasable music, it's going to be Ableton 10 out of 10 times. That's what it's going to be. And I may or may not use the hardware. I have, you know, a huge selection of virtual instruments and virtual effects that I use in that environment when I'm working in that environment. Let's see here. Oh, we're going to get a song mode in the MC707. That would be really awesome. I have a 707. I need to spend a little more time with it. There's never enough hours in the day. One of the things that really drew me to that was the fact that it, you know, 8 individual tracks, so I can take something like the Digitact, for instance, that I'm really fond of, program out some stuff in that, and then use the 8 individual MIDI tracks to control, you know, 8 other sounds in a different box. That's pretty magic. And the sound quality in that MC707, the Roland sounds are fantastic. What was my first piece of gear? I actually started out producing with a friend back in like 1987. And what we were using back in those days was a Roland S50, which is the very first commercially available sampler to the home synthesizer market. I don't know how viable it was. It was pretty pricey and very lousy. The Roland S50 sampler, like very first, way back in the 80s, it samples onto a diskette, a little 3.5-inch floppy, and it samples in 8-bit mono sound. So if you can imagine like sampling, you know, sounds from a CD, which is crystal clear, pristine, 16-bit, 44.1 kilohertz audio, and then you sample that into a Roland S50, you've got like really, really lo-fi recreation of that sound. So it wasn't really great for creating sounds per se, and we were just sampling stuff into it from like records and CDs and whatnot. And we were sequencing that with a Roland TR-505 drum machine. So this was like a very long time ago. And actually, one of the reasons that I became a sound designer was from those early sessions working with that Roland S50. Because back in those days, I mean, I literally would have killed. I would have killed for just one decent playable pad sound. But, you know, everything took up so much memory, and you didn't have any memory at all. 8-bit mono and on a floppy disk. It was brutal. But that's how I started way, way a long time ago, back in 1987. Absolutely. I am in the MC707 Facebook group, but I'm not really active in a lot of Facebook groups. I don't necessarily find them to be super welcoming personally, but yeah, I am a part of that Facebook group. I do have the Poly tracker. The thing with the tracker, guys, is that it had some issues when I first got it. I was actually one of the first people to pre-order the unit, so I got mine quite a long time ago when it very first shipped. My unit is actually the unit that has the flat keys in it because it was one of the very first units. I guess they've changed the keys and they're a little taller and a little more round now. But there was some issues in it. The LFO timings weren't accurate, so you couldn't actually sync up an LFO. The delay timings were inaccurate. The MIDI timing was inaccurate, so it didn't sync up with external gear very well. It still doesn't. They've made a lot of updates to it, and they're continuing to do so, and it is a very nice and fun to play with instrument, but it does have some problems currently syncing up to other MIDI gear. They're trying to work on that, but it is what it is at this time. My main interest in the Poly tracker as a sound designer was to do sound packs for this, the same way that I've done for the Digitact and for the Electron Model samples. And I am working on a giant sound bank for the Poly tracker with like 3,000 custom sounds in it that I've put together. But there's never enough hours in the day, so that's taking, you know, quite a bit more time than I was originally expecting it to take. Let's see here. But yeah, definitely glad to see Roland getting back into the Groovebox game. There's a lot of, you know, frustration about this new MV box that they've just put out, but I mean, that's not really marketed to me specifically. It's more of a singer-songwriter box. So I'm not really sure why the electronic heads are getting so upset about that. It's just not marketed to us. It's definitely something else. I'm new to you. Can you tell me any music Yeah, I release music under the moniker Prism Prime, but to be honest, I've really been focusing on sort of the YouTube channel over the last 3 years, more than I have been focusing on like my music per se. Um, let me change the camera angle there. I'm a sound designer, and I run a business called Electrona Sounds, where I sell my samples and loops and sound packs for the Electron Digitact, Electron model samples, Korg Electribe samplers, as well as just regular sound packs and sound banks for virtual synthesizers. But I make music under the moniker Prism Prime, which you can find anywhere where you're consuming music. I put out an EP about 2 years ago that actually went #1 in the breaks genre on Beatport. We beat the Chemical Brothers for about a week and a half there. That was one of the most amazing things that's ever happened. It was just in the break genre alone. It wasn't like I was #1 on Beatport or anything like that, but it was a really awesome little moment. And this in 2020, I did put out another 3-track EP of music under the moniker Prism Prime. I'm releasing on a little internet label these days called Boomtick Records, and that EP is called the Black Box EP, and it's 3 tracks that I put together using the Digitact only. I know I said that when I'm trying to make, finished music that I'm typically using Ableton, but that was, something special for that project to try to put together an EP using only the Digitact. And I think it came out pretty good, all things said and done. But if you, play those tracks side by side with things that I've made in Ableton, there is quite a bit of an, sonic audio difference. We don't have necessarily in a DAW-less setup, or just one box only, the amount of, tools and powerful sonic processing stuff that we do have in Ableton. So there are those sort of limitations. But I really put out a lot of music on the channel as well. I do a lot of live jams on the channel, and that's kind of where you can really hear a lot of my music nowadays, is just on this channel. There's a playlist that contains all of my live jams, and sometimes I put out pre-recorded tracks on this channel as well. Because of the lax MIDI, I do kind of have a SoundCloud page for Electrona Sounds and for Prism Prime, but neither one of those pages is updated. I'm on Facebook as Electrona Sounds and as Prism Prime. I'm on Instagram as Electrona Sounds. I'm on Twitter as Electrona Sounds. There's just never enough hours in the day, really, to post all this stuff and do all the projects that I would like to do, especially since I keep mixing it up and I'm using different tools for each of the, different projects. I pretty much start, from scratch what tools I'm going to use. Yeah, I think I actually might be connected with Brian on Facebook as well, Douglas. I appreciate that tip. Thank you. All right, so we've been going for almost 2 hours today. Let's go ahead and play the groove that we created maybe one more time. If anyone has any other questions, now would be a great time to get those in as we kind of wrap it up today. And let's see what we did create here. We started off at 111 beats per minute today, based on a request from the chat. Kind of ended up being a fun little tempo to work with. And let's not forget that I can turn the drum sounds off on this side as well. And then bring them back. Got a solo over this part. This is cool. I don't know what I did wrong there. Oh well. That's the beauty of the live stream. right, that's kind of a fun little groove that we created here today. Yeah, this is OBS I am using for streaming. This is only, I think, the third or second or third time that I've done it this way. I used to stream specifically with the iPhone 8 Plus, and in fact, that's what I'm using as a webcam. I'm using the iPhone 8 Plus as a webcam using an app called Epoch Cam. EPOCH cam, which is allowing me to plug it directly into the Mac so it stays charged as we do these streams as well. And then the overhead cam that I'm using is a Logitech Brio webcam that I just picked up. But if there's a software that does this better than OBS, I'll definitely check that out. And thank you for the tip. Mimo Live from Boinks Software, much more optimized for Mac OS. Thank you, Douglas. I will definitely check that out. I'm in the Valley, Tony. Basically, I'm just north of Los Angeles. Um, let's see here. So just about 2 hours on the stream, and we had a fun time putting together a kind of a casual groove. I'm going to hang around for just a few more minutes if anybody has any more questions, or if you guys want to, say goodbye to each other in the chat or whatnot. And we will be back next week for another, some sort of a live stream. I'm not sure if it'll be a Eurorack stream or maybe a model samples stream. I've been kind of itching to do one of those since I put out officially those 9 sound banks for it just this week. Let's see here. Yeah, I think we're already connected on Facebook, Douglas, but you absolutely can. But I think that we might already be connected there. This here is actually, I don't know if I can lift up this tray, but it's just two, let's see here. There are 2 individual stands, actually. And then I've got just a shelf, a metal shelf on top of these stands. So it's getting it, I don't know, about 8 inches off the desk for me. So all kind of the cables from the back of the Novation can kind of slide under here. Because we've got these extra pitch and CV gate and CV outputs coming directly out of the back. So kind of a extra bit of wiring there. So it helps really to get the stuff behind it off the desk a little bit. I am a sampling noob. Hey, well, hang around, Jamie, because this is the absolute right channel for that. Unfortunately, I can't sample into the model samples if we do a stream, but I've been really wanting to do another stream with the Digitact and do some live sampling into that now that we finally got the 2 camera setup so that I can really show like the details and you can see what I'm actually doing in the Digitact as we're sampling into it. And maybe we could do some sampling sessions into BeatMaker 3 on the iPad as well, stuff like that. I definitely want to keep mixing these up on the weekends. You guys know I change the setups a lot, so I think that's going to be maybe difficult once the official large Eurorack case that is being built for me shows up, because I won't necessarily have the room on the desk like we have now to change it up all the time, but we'll see. I also have another desk sort of station over here in the back corner, which might yeah, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, too, Seth. It's taken a lifetime to get to this moment. I do have a lot of gear, but the thing is I just want to stress that I really don't use my gear in the same way that, most people, would use their gear. I kind of feel like I have an excessive amount of gear in here. Like if my end goal all the time was just to write finished music, because you certainly don't need this amount of gear to write finished music these days. You can do it with just one box oftentimes, like an Akai MPC Live or an Akai Force. You can write, fully produced, mixed, and mastered music right in one box alone. But I'm always mixing everything up in here, and I'm using a lot of different things for sound design, and I'm making products, sound banks for, different boxes as well. So please don't feel like you really need a giant room of gear like this to get music made, because you just don't. If you have an iPad and no gear at all, you can make absolutely fantastic finished music. If you've got a computer with any DAW and no gear at all, you can still do the same thing, no problem. You don't even need virtual instruments. You can download free samples or free virtual instruments. You certainly don't, like this isn't a requirement to get music made. It's just a choice. I don't really have other hobbies per se. Like I don't even drive a car. So this is really where I'm spending the majority of my time. The headphones that I'm using, that's a great question. Let's see here. We got a question from Tony asking, what's the headphones? And I'd like to focus on that for a moment. What I'm normally using as my headphones in here to work with when I'm mixing and producing on headphones is a pair of Sennheiser HD 650 headphones. Sennheiser HD 650. They're not cheap, but they are absolutely magic. They're open back headphones, and they sound very, very, they have a very flat response. They're not necessarily coloring the sound, so it's a very accurate response on those Sennheiser HD 650, but you do need a headphone amplifier to power something like that, and you can't really see it in the shot. I can maybe, no, I can't really drag it forward, but I've got a headphone amplifier down here, which is powering my headphones to make sure that I get enough power so that they're working properly. And unfortunately, this was a very expensive little adapter unit here. It's a Rupert Neve headphone adapter. It was actually more expensive than the headphones themselves, but I'm really trying to get accurate sound in here. This isn't a hobby for me. This is what I'm doing for a living, and this is what I really need, that accurate sound. So that's what I'm using as my main monitoring system when I'm on headphones. But these here, for the live stream, I want to focus in on these specifically. These are Audio-Technica BPHS1, and they have this, built-in mic here. Now, when I did, I mean, it's me, right? So I spent a lot of time searching all the different models of like headsets that have a built-in mic, and what I found is that they're, for the most part, aimed at broadcast use, meaning people who are on television, and you need maybe to be able to hear stuff, and you want to be able to speak into the microphone, but you're not monitoring music, and you don't need a full spectrum accurate representation of what you're hearing. You just need to be able to hear some sound back and forth, like it's a football game or something, right? So and this is really important, every pair of these type of headphones that I found, except for this one, this is the one pair. I just want to read that number again. Audio-Technica BPHS1. Okay, these have a full frequency spectrum response. They go down all the way to like 20 hertz and all the way up to 20,000 kilohertz. But every other model of these headphones is aimed at broadcast use, and they don't represent the high frequency content that these do. They go from like, I don't know, 60 or 80 hertz up to about 14 or 16,000 hertz. You need that frequency range of 16,000 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Otherwise, you're not hearing the high frequency content of the music. And if you try to mix on headphones that don't represent the high frequency content, you're going to be cranking it up like 8 times louder than it really should be so that you can hear it properly in your headphones. So these are the only pair of headphones with a built-in mic that I could find over a period of a couple of weeks of searching really hard that feature that full frequency spectrum response, so that I can still hear all of the frequencies while I'm working, and that you guys can still hear my voice okay. EAH, love your content. Your reviews are thorough and really help. Hey, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I try really hard to show like different type of content than I feel that most other YouTubers are going to show. The way I try to make my content as useful and accurate, so you can really get an accurate idea of what things are going to sound like through different types of gear, because we all have different types of gear, and at the end of the day, if we all get the same plugin, we're going to want to use it on different material, and we're going to kind of want to use it differently. And we all make different styles of music. Some of us are going to want to run aggressive sounds through our plugins. Some of us are going to want to run chilled sounds through the plugins. And I really just want to, get those examples across as good as I can in these videos. Oh, that Waves Mercury bundle is pretty fantastic as well. I love the Waves plugins. I use in the desktop, I use quite a few of the Waves plugins. I have a go-to, which is the L3 Ultra Maximizer from Waves, which allows me in the DAW environment to get my tracks, really sort of glued together and get that overall volume sort of where I want it. The L3 Ultra Maximizer as the final plugin on my master bus from Waves. Ooh, love it. But I don't like that they've, put that policy in place over the last year or so where we now have to pay to keep our stuff updated. That's kind of a bummer because, like, I bought these plugins before they implemented that policy. And now if I want to keep all my Wave stuff updated, I have to pay quite a large fee to do so. That's kind of, I don't know, underhanded a little, I think. Bear Dynamic when it comes to the Sirius headphones. Right on. Yeah, I've heard good things about those as well. Absolutely. Check out the Allo headphones. Trust me, best quality out there for the price. Well, that is cool. Good to know. Allo headphones, everyone. Right on. Yeah, I am aware of that thing that they do with the sound grid. Yeah, absolutely. It's just not really my workflow because I'm changing everything up so much and I'm not necessarily just working in the DAW all the time. One of the reasons that I'm so much, I guess, outside the DAW these days is over the years. I mean, I've been at this for, since 1994, like pretty much every day, really, really seriously. This is how I spend my time. And so I've spent so much time with the mouse over the years that I have a really serious, like problem in my mouse finger. It hurts to use the mouse. If I'm going to sit here and spend, 8 hours in a really hardcore Ableton session, it's going to wreck my entire hand for like 3 to 4 days. Like that's how much I've, been using this hand over the last 20 years. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys, are familiar with what it takes to be a sample maker and an audio editor, but like go ahead and, load up and edit 100 samples in a session, or for instance, and edit them and save them and do all that work for a couple hours, but then do that every day for 20 years and you'll understand what I mean. My finger is just, oh my gosh. And so to get out of the box and be able to use hardware and not use my mouse finger all the time is definitely one of the biggest reasons actually that I've got so much hardware in this room so that I'm not always tied to the mouse and using that finger all the time. It's been a long career of doing this so far. Yeah, same problem. Sorry to hear that, Tony. That's frustrating. A2SAT, I got tendonitis. Yeah, exactly, right? You know, so definitely, one of the things that's drawn me to these other pieces of gear is that I don't just have to sit there and just grind on that one muscle. I mean, it's really all you're doing when you're working in a DAW. You're using one muscle the whole time for everything. And like if I'm designing sounds on virtual synthesizers, that's all mouse work as well. And that's one of the reasons why I haven't really been doing sound design for virtual synthesizers over the last few years. And definitely more hands-on with the iPad and with the hardware in the room. Absolutely. Yeah. Too many hours can cause a lot of issues. It really can. I've developed tinnitus over the years, and also I have a weird posture. I mean, I'm not trying to be a complainer, but, it is what it is. It's definitely better than some, other ways to get by for sure. Right, yeah. Just moving between playing instruments all day long and definitely taking a break. I'm a real hardcore worker. I mean, I'm my own boss and I'm kind of an asshole sometimes and I really work myself too hard, most of the time. It is what it is. All right. Oh yeah, working on graphics as a full-time job can add the same exact thing, right? Same exact thing. And then plus, we're using the computer I'm using the computer for so many other things in my life, I mean, I'm living, basically with social media and YouTube and all of these things, and it takes its toll on your fingers over the time for sure. And being your own boss is tough enough. Mobile Music Pro knows, Vortex knows, absolutely. Yeah. All right, you guys. I'm going to let you guys say goodbye to each other in the chat. And I really want to say again to everyone who stuck with me, thanks for, tuning in to these live streams. I really appreciate your support. If you haven't, be sure to strike that like button so that YouTube helps share the stream, so that it helps the YouTube algorithm, rather, share the stream to as many people as possible. I'm really trying hard to keep building this channel. Just hit 10,000 on the 1st of January. So that was really awesome. 10K subs. Woo woo. Hey, thanks very much, Sean. I appreciate that. Thanks for tuning in, Tim Mo. Thanks, Vortex. All right. Yeah, if anyone has any requests also for like the kind of sessions that we do, a lot of times, I don't necessarily have a solid idea when we start. I want these sessions to be really casual so you guys can sort of see how I'm using the gear in that creation stage in the beginning of a project. So for instance, today we just arbitrarily started with a BPM that somebody suggested in the chat. So if you guys have suggestions for like tempos or genres or things, I know Cowboy Bebop is on my list somewhere to get down to. Definitely, give me some suggestions as to things you might like to see me do on these live streams in the future. Um, I know not a lot of my viewers have their own Eurorack stuff, so sometimes the Eurorack might get a little tedious. I definitely want to, bring in other things as well. We just did a couple of live streams where we focused on the iPad with Beatmaker 3, for instance. So definitely feel free to, make suggestions and ask for content, and tempos and styles and different gear. And we'll see what we can do to make all that kind of stuff happen. I don't know what happened to my sound here. There's always anomalies. So want to say that again one more time to anyone who might have, ever had a little gas for the Waldorf Blofeld. This is such a fantastic little synthesizer for the money. Really great sounds out of the Blofeld. Okay, everyone. I really appreciate you tuning in, and until next time, thanks for watching. Okay, let me see if I can figure this out.